Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. We recently had two state elections in central Germany. That was Saxony and Thuringia. And today on Sunday, the 22nd of September, as I make this video now, the elections in the third state now, in the state of Brandenburg, are ongoing. We can expect results in a couple of hours this evening, and the end result will be fixed by tomorrow, I assume. But right now I want to inform you about the polls and what can be expected of this election in Brandenburg. Everybody knows the donut that is Brandenburg, of course. You have to get through Brandenburg if you want to get to Berlin. But it is also a state that has now experienced a lot of modernization. For example, you might have heard that Tesla's factory is in Brandenburg, that is running, and there were several attempts of left-winged criminals on shutting down this factory. So they have a lot of new jobs, well-paying jobs, high-tech industry jobs, but nevertheless, this might be the first time that the SPD, the Social Democrat Party of Germany, might not win the elections in Brandenburg. Brandenburg has been ruled since the reunification, since 1990, by the Social Democrats. And right now, we see a coalition together with the CDU and the Green Party, a so-called Jamaica coalition under the leadership of Mr. Wojtke from the Social Democrat Party, of course. He said that should the SPD not become the strongest party, he will resign. So people like him, I think. Half of the people of Brandenburg, or of the voters at least, said that if it was a direct election of the governor, they would vote for him. But it is not. It is an election of the state parliament, of the Landtag, and then the majority or a majority coalition in the Landtag elects the governor. So the first thing I want to focus on is the difference between this year and the last elections in 2019. You see, back then, the SPD was the biggest party, then the AfD, it was already close back then, but the SPD won, and then the CDU, the Green Party, the Socialist Uni Party, Die Linke, so the SED heirs, and then this smaller, more centrist, little conservative party, Freie Wähler. Now, when you compare this to what we can expect as an outcome today, you see that a lot of parties will not make it into parliament according to this 5% threshold that you see here as the red horizontal bar. You need to have over 5% normally to get into parliament. And there are some exceptions to this rule now in Brandenburg, and maybe I get to that later, but maybe it doesn't come to that. But generally, you need more than 5%. And you see that the FDP will not make it, and they didn't make it last time. So that's our pseudo-liberal party. Then Die Linke, as the BSW, Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, was established as a split off of Die Linke. You see that they collapsed, just 3.6% to be expected here, according to the polls. Then the Freien Wähler also won't make it. And the Green Party, that is a bit of happy news, good news. The Green Party will not be represented in parliament. The BSW, of course, they could collect all these communist votes. They are the new, more popular communist party because they are not so woke, and they also are very pro-Russian, and a lot of people in Germany are pro-Russian. I'm accused of that, but I'm not. I'm not pro-Russian, I'm pro-German, and I don't want to be involved in that conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And if you say that, a lot of people who are maybe fans of George W. Bush or Biden or Obama, they would call you then pro-Russian, when in fact I'm just neutral, or rather pro-German. But the BSW, I think they're really pro-Russian. I think it is very hard to frame that still as neutrality when you listen to what they say. But they also would never work together with the AfD, even though they indicated that they are not okay with the way that the established parties treat the AfD. But now, after the elections in Thuringia and Saxony, that turned out to be just a lie, a flat-out lie. And they're also, of course, absolutely opposed to any form of deportation, and they want to keep the borders open, even though they sometimes say something to the contrary, but they are strongly opposed to border controls and to deportations. And this time, if you look at the stronger parties, the AfD and the Social Democrat Party, this time it seems like the AfD has the edge, but it is just a very close race, 27.5 to 26.6. It's not even a whole percentage point that they're ahead of the Social Democrats. And if you go on and look at how this changed over the last weeks or since July, let's say, you see that the AfD was clearly ahead of the Social Democrats for a very long time, since the beginning of 2023, I think, even, yeah. And now the SPD is surging because a lot of other parties, they say now to their voters, you should vote for the SPD, not for us. It's tactical voting, because if the SPD becomes strongest party, then it is clear we don't want the AfD to be the strongest party. So they do this united national front kind of thing that you know from France, for example. It happens there to the Front National, and here, or no, Rassemblement National, they call themselves these days. Anyway, so you see that all the quote-unquote democratic parties, they work together in order to make sure that the AfD won't win. And that is basically what is behind this surge now. See, the Green Party goes down, the Linke goes down, the FDP almost not here anymore on the chart. But they all want the SPD now because they are the most realistic opponent, and they can actually win against the AfD in that state. So it's the typical United National Front thing, that you see every time in Germany and also in other countries. The establishment, the people who are connected to Washington, D.C. and London and the other city and country that I'm not allowed to name here in Germany, these people are getting really panicky right now, that a patriotic pro-German movement, a pro-German party might actually win. If you look at what Mr. Berndt, the leader of the AfD in Brandenburg, what he says that he wants to protect Germans first. He wants to take care of Germans, and that we should control our borders, and that certain people, certain dangerous people should not be allowed at public events anymore, like festivals and these things. And we've seen a lot of nasty crime, very violent acts against Germans recently. And the AfD is the only party that actually wants to protect German people. And that is, of course, something that the enemies of Germany don't want. They want to exterminate Europeans, and that is why they work all together against the AfD. So if we look then at the possible outcomes, you see that there are only a few coalitions possible. The only one excluding the AfD here would be the SPD and the CDU together. But of course, if that is not enough, then they could also go together with the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht. And then the CDU, the oh so conservative CDU, would have to enter a coalition with extreme left communists that basically go back to Stalinism. And that would be very revealing. So I talked earlier in this presentation about a exception to this 5% rule, and that is if some member, some guy from a party that would not get over 5%, if one of those guys won a district directly, then his party would enter the parliament with the percentage of seats according to their result, right? If they have 3% of the votes, they would have to get 3% of the seats in parliament. But what if the parliament only has 80 or 88 seats or something like that? Well, then the parliament must get bigger, and that is called an Überhangsmandate and stuff like that. It gets complicated. Basically just means you increase the number of seats in parliament so that the percentage points of the parties work out again, and every party is represented with their relative share of the votes in parliament with the number of seats they have. So here is an example, and this goes for all the other smaller parties now too. If Die Linke, for example, would win a direct district or something, then they would be there with 3% or something, and then you see this little pink piece of this cake diagram. Yeah, and then it looks a little different, but the truth remains that the CDU would have to enter a coalition with them, and they're also communists. So nothing really changed. And the takeaway message is, yeah, the AfD might not rule because, once again, nobody wants to enter a coalition with a party that wants to protect Germans and that is pro-German. And that is then the reason for more uncomfortable dysfunctional coalitions at the state level, similar to what we see also at the federal level. I mean, this Ampel coalition is not really functional. The FDP and the Green Party hate each other. So, and the same thing would be true here. And a lot of CDU guys from Brandenburg, they're very close to AfD guys. They have a lot of overlap ideologically and value-wise. A lot of people in the CDU, they don't really know what the CDU actually is, and they basically believe the propaganda about the CDU. Even though they might be in the CDU for 20 years, they still believe it's an actual conservative party, which is ridiculous. But there are people out there that are this naive, yes, and they also enter the party and they also want to become members of parliament there and rise through the ranks, but still their childlike naivete and their false beliefs about their own parties are miraculously still intact. So anyway, I keep you informed, and I expect an AfD win, but it might be close. I mean, the polls right now are not really clear. The SPD might still come out ahead. Let's see. Enjoy the rest of your day. Servus, Kameraden.